and thank you for inviting somebody from academia to your Pharmaceutical Congress. I have a very short stint in pharma, and in that short stint, I met Dr. Rao Vadlamudi, and thank you so much for keeping in touch. It's been such a pleasure to have you, as a contact. So I'm a professor at the Department of Bioscience and Bioengineering at the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, in the city of Mumbai. So for us to change our name, it's an act of parliament. So we have to go back to the parliament. So I will tell you my perspective on trying to leverage partnerships between Indian pharma and academia. And you will know some of this already, I'm sure, but I'm going to lead towards how we can do this. And the example I'll be showing you is one which has been discussed in more than one talk, and that is of one of my colleagues who is in my department. This is Rahul Purwar. And I'll give you the inside story perhaps. So I'll tell you how it started and then where it has come to. So you all know where it has reached. This is Rahul's startup company, IMO Act. But I think because I have seen him from the day that he joined my department as a little assistant professor, I can tell you the backstory of how it all started. And his example is going to be taken really to illustrate what I'm trying to say today. So you know this, India is a pharmacy to the world. And you know that we do very, very well in generics and other such, sectors. So obviously, Indian pharma has a huge role to play in global well-being, which is the topic of your Indian Pharmaceutical Congress this year. So you have also many opportunities in the pharma sector. I've just listed a few. And we heard some really terrific talks and, about how the Indian pharma sector is, putting a lot more effort into these bio kind of activities. So I must confess, I was very happy to hear the talks because it was my language. So I could understand a lot of these bio talks because, it's something which I've been working on myself. But it's also very interesting to see how the Indian pharma is moving from the chemical entities into the biological entities. So this slide is just to show you that, in fact, India has done very, very well in generics. So you can see over there on the last part of the top, this top part. So we have US, we have the EU, and we have India. And of course, India has done terrifically well in generics. We've also done quite well in incremental innovation, but we don't do that well in new molecular entities. So we heard this from Nilima, that the innovation and the new molecules is something that Indian pharma sector is in the early stages of trying to push forward. So the point of this slide is really to tell you that innovation, I agree completely with what we heard before, is probably something which the pharma sector would be interested in pushing. So today my talk is how does one do that? And I'm going to give you one approach, which is the title of my talk, which is that working with academia might be one way of enhancing innovation. So again, you'll see that there are different ways of building this strong R&D ecosystem, but strong linkages between academia and industry is very likely to be one of your strategies to moving forward. So again, Indian pharma can actually leverage collaborative mechanisms with academic and public institutes. So how can we actually do this? So the first question that we may all be thinking is Indian pharma and Indian academia completely out of sync? And this would not be a question that would be unusual to ask oneself, because if you think of our stakeholders, our shareholders, our commitment, they are actually very different. So industry has to deliver shareholder value. For startups, you have to provide returns to your investors. You have to monetize innovations. It's really based on monetizing. And the culture obviously is therefore more guarded. In academia, the stakeholders are the students and the academic community. We obviously have a commitment to teaching. We do innovative research, but we don't necessarily think about monetizing it. And our culture encourages open sharing and findings through publication. So you might think that these are two approaches which are not compatible with each other. They are at odds with each other. So can we bridge this gap for mutual benefit? That's really the question that I'm trying to address today. So the thing to keep in mind is that these two sectors, they actually have complementary skill sets. So you can see on this side, when we have business, it's obviously development, and there's also a lot of applied work. The basic research is very less, and it should be that way because industry, as I told you already, that is not the game, right? It's a very different game being played. Whereas in higher education, you'll see there's a lot of basic research and some applied research, and then much less development because we are playing a different game. But these two sectors are actually complementary to each other because you could have the basic research and the applied research being done in higher education institutes being taken up by industry for further development. So it could be a very good synergistic interaction. So this is actually reflected in the fact that there are many, many more co-authored publications between industry and academia globally. And this is going up tremendously. And in addition to the numbers, the joint impact, so on the y-axis, it is some kind of weighted impact factor, but the joint impact is much higher when industry and academia collaborate. So this is only publications. This is just one metric. And I'm going to show you, like I said, some examples of other much more sort of tangible benefits. So I hope so far I've convinced you that it is important for industry and academia to collaborate, and it could be mutually beneficial because we have complementary skill sets and we can actually use them to get something new out. So here's some examples. A lot of them are the IITs, but we are actually pretty good at doing industry collaborations because we've been doing it for a very long time. So I won't go through it. You can read it yourselves. Again, because we are technology institutes, we have a lot of industry engagement with the electronics industry, with the computer industry, and those kind of people. But we also do have much more interest in the biomedical realm right now. And just one small example is actually IIC Bangalore and Biocon. So they've actually got something in the market, which is a new drug delivery system. So again, in India, we already have these industry and academia collaborations. And the poster child of an academia-industry collaboration is actually our COVID-19 vaccine because it was initially started, the work was started through very robust collaboration between AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford, which is the Jenner Institute. And of course, once it came to Serum Institute, there's massive manufacturing. So again, just to quickly summarize, industry, academia collaboration may be something which is actually worth doing. So for another 5 or 7 minutes, I'll discuss how can we do this. So what's required to get there? So it's very clear that we speak different languages. So for us to be able to even start thinking about working together, we have to talk to each other. And this cartoon is not easy to read, but I'll just read it out to you. Here are two researchers. One is saying, I'll have some H2O, please. And the other researcher is saying, I'll have some H2O2, please. And the one who's drinking the H2O2 is now RIP. So this is just a language issue, right? You're not able to speak the same language, and it is leading to disastrous consequences. So we need to get over this initial barrier. We need to talk. So how do we start talking? So obviously, you want to find a partner with complementary interests, right? So you must, both sides need to see who has published in the same area. What are the previous collaborations which have worked very well? Both sides actively search for such partners, right? So you know what your strengths are, you know what you're looking for, you start looking around for partners in either industry or academia to see how to work. And something which we've done a lot in IIT Bombay is we've had industry academia workshops with very clear and defined outcomes. So we don't just come and talk and go away. That has happened. We have talked, we've had a good time, and then we just left. And not much came out of it. But we have also had several workshops where we have very clearly defined goals where we want to actually decide what is to be done next and move towards that. What else is required to get there? We need money. So talking is one nice thing, but then finally who's going to pay for all this? So very happy to hear the talk in the morning. So governments are increasingly funding these types of collaboration. And in fact, sometimes these kind of three-way collaborations are called triple helix. So these are just two small graphs to show you that the Indian government puts a lot of money into R&D. And in fact, the Indian government puts in more money into R&D than industry. So the Indian government is a huge source of, facilitative funding for the kinds of things that we may want to do together. I did one very quick search on the government schemes portal, and I have used this portal many times to send my own grants, but there is another tab of academia-industry partnerships, which is there in the government funding portals. And so again, there are ways of actually getting money to do these kind of collaborative research projects. I want to also tell you about some of the things happening in IIT Bombay. I will probably wrap up in another 5 to 7 minutes. What else do we need to do these academia-industry collaborations? So we have something called our research park, and this is a picture of our research park. It is actually a place where we can actually host industry to come in and set up a small unit as you wish. It's obviously a small one, but the goal is to do R&D. And so what is the access that industries who come to our research park have? They actually have access to our entire campus, our entire facilities, our faculty, our students. Of course, there are terms and conditions, which one will have to figure out. But you have a small space on the campus of IIT Bombay in the research park with complete access to the entire institutional capabilities. And there are many, many companies that have started to come into the research park and work with us on very defined projects where we have mutual interest. I'll tell you another infrastructure, and the reason I'm telling you all this is because you will see how they've been leveraged in the case of IMO Act. So we have our Society for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which is called SIGN. It's been around for almost 20 years now. It's one of the oldest business incubators among the IITs. So we've had over 230 plus startups, and in the last 10 years, we're having a lot more biology startups. So it used to be Ola, it used to be apps which you can quickly do some coding and you have a nice business model. Those are still continuing, but we also have a lot of biology startups now in SIGN. We've had over 1,000 entrepreneurs and a lot of funding raised by our business incubator. So I've told you we need to talk. There are sources of funding. So I'm going to put all this together and show you the example of Rahul's idea that he had. So the reason I'm telling you this is that Pharma can get into this game whenever they wish, whenever you wish. But I'm telling you this story because academia is already trying to get into this game whether Pharma is there or not. So I just want to show you that we have so many opportunities that we're able to get into this game of doing something interesting, even if we have our own ideas. And of course, academia would be delighted to have Pharma join in because we can't take it to the end point unless we have this collaboration with the pharmaceutical industry. But getting started, we can do that. So let me show you how. So here we have Rahul. So he's my colleague in the Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering. And when he joined, he was, doing his thing. He was making sure he got papers. He had to get his promotion. But he was also in the side, he was trying to develop his CAR T-cell therapy products. So he was able to use the PhD students to get started on some of his ideas. So what was his idea? He wanted to set up a company eventually which could give affordable cancer immunotherapy using CAR T cells. That was his idea when he joined. So what happened? How did he do this? So I've just shown you, and I got this from Rahul himself. I changed the slide around a little bit so that I could make my point better. But thanks to Rahul for giving me his company details. So what did he do? In 2013 to 17, this was while he was an assistant professor in IIT Bombay. He developed those lentiviral platforms, and he actually made sure that they had something different, which was patentable. And he tested everything using PhD students at IIT Bombay to do the work. He could also get project staff, he had MSc students. So all these early studies of showing that he had a novel technology were all done in an academic institution. Then from 2018 to 20, he actually completed his preclinical characterization and he submitted his IND to, to your organization. And simultaneously, while he was doing all this, he got a terrific clinical partnership with Tata Memorial Hospital. And cannot emphasize how important this collaboration was for him. So from 2021 to 2023, he had the first human dose for pediatric lymphomas. And I remember vividly, I was coming out of the department one day, and he was entering or the other way around, and I'm like, hey, Rahul, how's it going? And he said, Swathi, I'm so happy because today I got this photo of this pediatric patient who was in the last stage, the terminal stages of cancer. And here's this photo now. And there was this person sitting on a bed smiling happily and looking like they were ready for the next day. So I said, Rahul, this is fantastic. And he said, Swathi, this is why I do it. Right? So it's not like it was easy. But he showed me that photo of that pediatric cancer patient and said, this is why I'm just pushing on with this. So at this point, he got his investment from Laurus Labs. So this is the pharmaceutical company that came in and said, now we're going to, ready to put in money to see how to take your idea forward. Of course, he also started his GMP facility. I should tell you again, because I know this inside story a little bit. If you come to IIT Bombay BSB department today, you will see we have a really nice GMP facility which was given to us by a donor, Mr. Raj Nair. And this is a GMP facility which can now be used for my colleagues who have any products which require some clinical trials to be, for their product to be put into humans. But when Rahul was doing all this work, we had no GMP facility in our campus. So he had to go off, he had to make it himself. He made a small one, now he's going to make a very big one. But we now have that GMP which somebody else can use, but Rahul didn't have it. So he had to go off and do it by himself. And from 2023 to present, he's actually got market approval for his first product. And he has got 50 plus hospitals onboarded, and he's done more than 100 patient infusions. So IMO Act is definitely on this, this rather cliched arrow, but it's definitely on the upswing. There's no doubt about that. So that is the name of his company, IMO Act. So I just want to show you this traffic light of when did Indian pharma come in this trajectory of IMO Act. So early stage development of the therapy, and I'm pretty sure it was around this time. It was in this 2018 time. And I again know this because I was Dean for International Relations, and Rahul and I and a few of our colleagues, we had gone to Israel to explore various opportunities for funding and for different research projects. And I can tell you that, and I will not tell you the name of the company, but it was one of the top 5 pharma companies of India. Rahul was in continuous talks with them, trying to see if they would actually fund him. And at the last minute, they said no. So they dropped out. So that was the red light. There was not much happening. He was not getting his big bolus of funding. He kept going, he didn't stop. Then, and how did he actually do this, right? So how did he not stop? It's because he got government funding. He was able to get donor funding. We have a very generous alumnus, Ramesh Vadvani, who has started this Vadvani Research Center for Biosciences. Even through that avenue, Rahul was able to get money. And even I do have some small projects with WRCB in terms of applied projects. And he started in Sign. So I told you about our business incubator. He set up his company. He started it in Sign. So IIT Bombay had a small business incubator for bio. It's quite big for other topics, but he was able to at least get going. And finally, Laurus Labs could step in when proof of concept had been demonstrated, including early clinical trials. So the risk for them was highly mitigated because all the work has been done in government institutions, right? Even Tata Memorial is actually, it's a government institution. So the risk for Indian pharma actually turned out to be much less. They stepped in when they were comfortable. Less risk, things are looking good. Now we'll step in and we'll pump in as much money as he needs. So here we are. We have IMO Act today. And this was really fun. We had the President of India come to IIT Bombay, and we had to book this huge 1,000-room convocation hall, 1,000-seat convocation hall, because, so I'll again tell you the inside story. Our head was a bit worried. He said, Rahul, we are booking this huge convo hall, which is used for our graduations. It's got 1,000 seats. Who will come? And I'm sure we can all appreciate this, because every time I turned around in this room, I kept looking in the back and seeing how many people are in the audience. And it's really embarrassing if you've called the President of India and then you have nobody sitting in the 1,000-room hall. Rahul told him, Balaji, don't worry. My own employees will come with their families and they will fill 3/4 of your hall because they are so happy and proud of what we have accomplished. Of course, we were also there for him, but the hall was full. So what's happening with IMO Act? The cost to patient in India is 1/10 that of the US. It is $50,000 US. Not affordable for every Indian, of course, but let's hope we can get it down. But in the US, it is $400,000 or $500,000 plus. And Rahul has also raised about $15 million from investors, and his company is today valued at $23 million. So today, IMO Act is definitely, like I said, on the higher end of that arrow. And tomorrow, they want to be global. They want to be part of global well-being, as is part of your Indian Pharmaceutical Congress title. So he had a visitor from, people from the government of Mexico come and explore whether this is something they could do in Mexico. And I think the clinical trials are going to start over there. So that's my example of how we can collaborate. How does India, how does Indian academia and pharma collaborate? And my example is really to show you that it is to our benefit. It's for both of us to actually learn from each other and to take good ideas forward, knowing that each of us has strengths which the other doesn't. So we really can work well together as a team and go beyond just what we can do individually. This is my last slide. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being here even at the end of this session. And my take-home message is really this: let's start talking. So if you have any interest, do contact either me. That's the contact number of our Dean for Research and Development. There's lots of contact numbers of the Research Park people. So bottom line is, let's start talking. Let's see where we can take this. So thanks so much for listening. When it comes to startups, they're all internal people. We don't get, so we have, so Sign is part of this bigger ecosystem of entrepreneurship. Many of the IITs and even ISC, they have these incubators, and there they get funding from BIRAC and other government agencies. So part of their mandate is that they screen proposals from all sorts of people in India. Those proposals are screened by sending it to experts. I have got a few sometimes, but there are many experts who do that. So part of their job is to actually screen many proposals, which they do. But the other part of the business incubator is to provide space, and that is only given to internal people. So you have to either be a faculty student or an alumnus of IIT Bombay, and then you will get space, and I will guarantee that the space is at rates which are highly competitive for that part of Mumbai. It's too expensive otherwise to get that space. But the proposals are screened in a very standard and a very routine way.